This is an RNZ podcast.
But you know mean say you know they my mind. And I see say the thing don't affect you.
Music has always been a form of expression for me.
Take the best route.
It's always been a place to get lost. At the heart of it, that intent to just stay true to what I grew up understanding music to be, the functions and just the beauty really of music that can still be heard in my music. It's still very much there.
Kia ora and welcome to another series of the Here Now podcast with me, Kadambari Raghukumar. Kicking off this year is the second season of Back to Basics. In the series, I'm chatting with musicians across the motu about sounds they grew up with and how they shaped the music that they play today in their adopted home, New Zealand.
I couldn't read sheet music to save my life, but I knew some solfa notations, so I would try and learn some of the stuff. Not necessarily because I could read the solfa properly, but by ear. So I'd learn by ear and just replicate them, and he'd be like, he was actually quite impressed. He'd be like, you know, that stuff that you're singing took us 3 months to perfect.
Emmanuel Chinonso Nwachukwu, also known as Chinonso, grew up in Enugu, southeastern Nigeria. It's a part of the country that's Igbo-speaking, pretty well known for its film industry, Nollywood, and its once booming coal industry. And in the 80s and 90s, you're talking changing social and political landscapes, and of course, an undeniably vibrant music scene. We'll be getting into all of that in this podcast through Chinonso's story. He's now an unmistakable voice in Auckland's music scene, with a style that bridges his worlds. Worlds as far removed from each other like church choirs and university boy bands in Nigeria, to being a 2025 APRA Silver Scroll finalist here in New Zealand. So when we go back to basics, what were the foundational sounds for Chinonso?
High life music. It was cultural, Igbo cultural, traditional folk music. And then from the Caribbean, it was calypso, a little bit of, later on, a little bit of reggae, dancehall. Yeah, definitely soul on R&B. And a whole lot of hip-hop in my formative years. So a whole mix of all of those were playing in the radio throughout my childhood and formative years. And I just soaked them all in.
No, I did not wait till forever o'clock. You do say I gotta wait, you reach forever o'clock.
But to get a sense of that mix, you really got to look at Nigeria in the 80s. Following the oil boom of the 70s, the country was transitioning through various military regimes. Fela Kuti was at his peak of political defiance in the 80s. It was a social setting where the middle class was growing, but political uncertainty was high, and there were austerity measures weighing down on the people. Through all of that, there was high life and gospel too.
I grew up singing in the choir, so a little bit of hymn here and there. A little bit
hang on, you can't just gloss over that. I was coming to that, but you volunteered that information. So tell me about your choir days.
I first started in the children's choir.
Where was this?
This was actually not in Enugu. We'd moved from Enugu there. My father worked with the government. He did get transferred a little bit growing up, and so we moved from Enugu, I was born, to Calabar, which is also in the southeast, further east than the Igbo-speaking parts. We moved to Calabar, and that's the first time I was in the choir. I was in the choir with my brother. He was the choir master, the children's choir master, but I ended up doing a whole lot of the conducting myself, just standing in front of the other kids, pretending to know what I was doing with my arms. And yeah, we sang church hymns, we sang in Efik, we sang in English, a few Igbo hymns now and then as well.
So was that your sort of primary introduction into singing, or had you also been going to music school? Had you been studying?
Oh, no, there was no music school for me at all. Okay. So there are two categories of kids. There's the Ajekbaku and then there's the Ajebota. a little backstory to that.
I love definition. A good backstory.
So the Ajebota is the the posh kid. So the posh kid goes to music school and has after school activities and all of that stuff. Then the Ajebu, the likes of us, which I guess there's definitely more of us. You didn't have those. If you had any interests, you either if you were say you were athletic, you could play football in the streets.
You wouldn't go to the academy.
No,
train.
there was no academy for you. There's no formal training for you and that sort of thing. I mean, there are parents who would go out of their way to make sure their kids got involved in all of those things, but not everyone could afford that. So if you were good at singing, you sang in church, and that's what I did. So
did you enjoy it, or did you do it because you kind of had to?
Oh yeah, music has always been a form of expression for me. It's always been a place to get lost, like just very voluntarily lose yourself.
Lost in his bedroom, poring over his father's sheet music and tapes, Chinonso's dad was a key part to his heavily musically influenced upbringing.
I would spend hours and hours in the bedroom just listening to my father's tapes. My father had also been in the choir. He sang up until adulthood even. He was in a choir. I think it was called the Enugu Musical Society at the time. They were unofficially, I guess, the state choir would perform at the government house at functions and all of that. I guess it'd be the equivalent of, say, like the Philharmonic, orchestra, that sort of thing.
Amongst all the social and political changes of the day in the early 70s and 80s, some artists like Fela were highly critical of the government. But it was also common in Nigeria for some music groups to receive state patronage or evolve out of army and police brass bands. They gained crossover appeal, like the famous Nigerian police force band that performed juju and highlife music all across venues at social events for large crowds during the 80s.
I grew up during the military dictatorships in Nigeria, so that they would sometimes have the military administrator of the time commandeer a performance. It sounds all grand and all that from them. So whether or not they wanted to, they had to perform that sort of thing.
I like how you laugh about it now, but who was in power when you were growing up?
Oh,
do you recall?
So first of all, it was General Babangida. He actually took power, and that's literally taking power, the year I was born, and then he stayed on for 8 years or so, and then it was another. There was an interim government, and then another military dictatorship, that sort of thing.
So it's no surprise that what came out of Nigeria was this heady mix of styles and musical messaging. But whatever the style, music's never just been a background noise in Nigeria, but essentially a pulse of the people.
It's a very interesting sort of relationship between the political, socio-political backdrop against which the music was emerging, and the activism that was also in some of the music then growing up. So, for example, the well-known, Fela Kuti had that sort of, he would often butt heads with the government of the day because, yes, they were sort of shaping each other, but there was that antagonism between the two entities as well. So, yes, there were police bands, there were bands, high life bands all around. If you flew too close to the sun, you got banned in terms of speaking up against, the injustices of the day. But then all of that, just the struggle of all of that, even though I was too young to really understand it then, was shaping my understanding of music, was shaping what I thought good music was. So it had to have rhythm, it had to make you dance, but it also had to pull at your heartstrings, it had to tug at something, it had to make you think beyond the music, it had to make you, I've heard someone say that, I forget who, I'm really terrible with names, but I think it was a rapper recently who said that, some people make music for people for while they're drinking, and he makes music for while they're thinking. So I'd say that the music I grew up on tried to do both. So you were either shaking your body to Fela music, or just heaving a huge sigh and going, I feel you, yeah, you're speaking to my pain, that sort of thing. So,
and that's a very distinguishing factor of Nigerian music, quite a strong element of social commentary in a lot of the music, right? It's not just, while it sounds rhythmic and danceable and upbeat, someone like you comes to New Zealand and are a singer yourself, there might be this expectation that your job is to entertain people. and get up there and make people move.
There's always been space in my mind from a cultural perspective for music to have function. And it didn't have to be an either-or situation. So it didn't have to either be soothing, a collective pain or be entertaining. It could do both and do it so well you wouldn't even, you could whichever lens you wanted to look at it through, you could. A good example, for example, would be Fela Kuti's Coffin for Head of State. That's a groovy song. Coffin for Head of State is literally talking. It's his reflection on how the military raided his Kalakuta Republic. Then I think it was called. Things got escalated so much. His mum died as a result of that. If I remember correctly, they were really violent towards her. I don't want to get into the details of it. And she lost her life. So and there was this legend that he took his mum's coffin to the headquarters of the military in Lagos at the time and basically left her there like, all right, you guys have killed her, do with her what you want, that sort of thing. It was this huge political statement, and then he went on ahead to write that song. But that song is groovy as, and we played it a couple of times, with Ijebu Pleasure Club, and every time I danced to it, every time I sang to it, I remember that story. I remember hearing that story as a child, right? And there is no, I guess, there's no guilt or compunction that oh no, you're doing something wrong by dancing to someone's pain, because literally, culturally, you're expected to sometimes pain. I don't know if you've ever felt grief or any such thing. You know that you feel it in your bones. You feel it right down to your marrows. So it is okay to move your body as an expression of emotions, and that's a huge cultural thing for us. It's not just in popular music; it's also in traditional dirges. Off the top of my head, I want to say ese. There's this particular type of music that's played when an elder relative in a family, usually the head of the family, dies. In my father's side of Igbo land, called ese. Mm-hmm. And during that ese, it's a celebration. Usually if the person died quite old, that's only when you play the ese. It's a celebration of the person's life. It's a celebration of the person's achievements. And so you have literally the person's heir and the rest of the lineage lined up behind them, dancing, taking turns to dance to the drum. It doesn't detract from the sorrow that you're going through. It doesn't detract from the grief. In my mind, that's how music is. That is one of the many different beautiful functions of music. And so, with that space in my mind, it's okay for people who don't understand the language or don't understand everything that your music is about to relate to it physiologically, and that's fine. But also those who get it. I guess another reference for it would be in gospel, people getting slain in the spirit. So it's all part of what we do as humans, as people who have music quite up there in the ways that we express our lives.
And so, movement being part of that.
Movement being a strong part of that, yes.
Absolutely.
I call you my Black Rover.
Now, for a second, imagine leaving all of that and making your way to New Zealand. About 8 years ago, Chinonso decided to leave Lagos and come to Auckland. When you arrived here, did you think you would continue to do music?
To be honest, I had actually sort of put music to the side already in Nigeria. I was so busy, I was teaching at the time, I was so busy with work and Lagos traffic that I just couldn't keep trying to do music. I knew that ultimately I wanted to do something with music. I wanted to come back to it at some point, but I hadn't been performing or recording for ages until I came to New Zealand, and all of a sudden, all that extra time, from not sitting in Lagos traffic for hours, was now available. Some app where you could meet up people who are wanting to form a band, that sort of thing. That's where I went, and I found Ben McNichol, amazing dude, who ended up putting Ijebu Pleasure Club together. And it felt like something I could do because I now suddenly had all this free time. So I wasn't really thinking. It wasn't a planned sort of thing. But once I got back on that horse, it felt right to stay on it.
Chinonso and his band Ijebu Pleasure Club treated Auckland and festivals all across the Motu to a sound that was pretty unique over the last few years. A mashup of all the styles he actually grew up on.
With Ijebu Pleasure Club, it was definitely a mix of a whole lot of stuff. The concept of the band was built around the legend of Fela Kuti, so adapting his the Afrobeat music that he pioneered, and then just doing mashups really of those and 80s pop music, that sort of thing. That was the vibe of it, and so we pretty much just tried to adapt things that people recognize from that time. And further back to what like the semblance of Afrobeat sometimes, and sometimes it was more we played more to the actual style of the music themselves, and then occasionally of course we'd play, not occasionally, we would often have Fela Kuti's music on the set list as well.
He's now gone on to make his own music, releasing singles and EPs. And this track in the background, called JJC, which stands for Johnny Just Come, is a slang often used for people fresh off the boat in Nigeria. Lots of his music continues to speak to this experience of two worlds and making new homes.
But no sunscreen. So I'll be under the awning, eating ice cream like a JJC.
And his debut EP was titled Cola Nuts and Chardonnay. It's that perfect metaphor for life in Aotearoa, meeting West African foundations, but also...
I would credit African American culture in general for that sort of external boost that I don't know, just broke wide my view in music. Just that the way that they embody and perform their music. So whether it's soul or R&B, hip hop, funk, you name it, there is this, I don't know how to say without sounding too woo-woo, but like, it's like my soul sees their soul, you know what I mean, when I watch the greats perform. And so that's also, in addition to the call and response and the traditional rhythms that I'm used to, that also informs the way that I try to sing. There is a belting from the diaphragm that I'm pretty sure I get from both my heritage and an exposure to African American, whatever genre of music you inserted there, it works, you know. Hopefully you can hear it in my style when I sing. Obviously the riffs and runs a little bit sometimes.
No relenting, no. Them I no fit to dull your shine. You make it look easy.
Is it hard doing what you do here in New Zealand?
To the extent that it's not always all the way viable, yes, can be challenging, especially as an independent artist, when you are not just thinking about the music. And I know it's not peculiar to New Zealand. Artists all the world over are having to put on all the hats. They're having to, in addition to making the music, which in and of itself is a full-time job. It used to be some people's full-time job back in the day, right? Still is for those who are lucky. But in addition to that, you're also supposed to be the marketer. If you've got a good team, you know, good for you, good on you. But you're meant to be the marketer, you're meant to be your own promoter, you're meant to be your own, you know, everything, you're networking and all of that stuff. And so that all the other hats that you have to put on can sometimes affect the creative process. And if you layer onto that the fact that I'm doing a kind of music that I know is frankly alien here, it's culturally alien, but I do know what purpose it fulfills, right? My son, for example, is growing up here without steady, like physical access to my part of his heritage, and to an extent, this is it. This is the legacy that he is looking up to. This is, besides the fact that we speak Igbo. I try my best to speak Igbo to him as often as I can at home, but this is also a way of saying that you are a part of this space too, right? So it's important knowing that purpose sort of is the drive to keep going, even when it feels like you are literally trying to empty an ocean with a tablespoon. So it can feel that daunting sometimes, but yeah, that drive, I guess, is the motivation to keep going.
Make everything look new, but not so come out, but it's there to you. Man, oh, man, when I tell
You can catch Chinonso's latest work on all streaming platforms, including his upcoming 2026 music, so keep an eye and ear out. I'm Kadambari Raghukumar, and today's episode of Here Now was mixed by Corey Fuemaono. This was Back to Basics, and you can find all the podcasts on all your favourite podcast platforms, so follow us. Thanks for listening.
you,